My name is Ashish. We're just discussing around the three pillars majorly around the property, which is why, what and where. However, I'm still going to cover how, the due diligence that you have to put in place, because I've felt in last few years property is not about intuition based buying anymore. It has become a science, right? Not a rocket science, but science. So how many of you have got investment properties? Right, that's less, that's all right. What about owner-occupier properties? Awesome. Sometimes that serves as the best asset. How many are looking to buy a property? All right, rest can leave, thank you. All right, look, the idea is just to put forward the education. This is just purely education. The research, analysis, and the knowledge I've gained in last 8-9 years of my property investing journey. I was a bit of a DIY freak. Can't do plumbing, don't know shit about plumbing, but I'd love to do it myself. I've just changed the way I've grown. I now like to employ the right people to do the right jobs. All right, just a little bit about me. Overall, 18 years of industry experience. I've spent 9 years in Australian real estate. I've got a passion of support. I've got a desire to educate, mentor. Don't worry, I don't sell an educational course. I still do one-to-ones with my clients. But the idea is not to sell a property, but to sell education and knowledge. Yes, that's how I've started being a buyer's agent. How many are not aware who a buyer's agent is? Right, I've got one. Look, it's just the usual real estate agents are people who you would employ to sell your property. A buyer's agent is a person or a real estate agent who would act in your best interest just to buy the property on your behalf. Now, it could be just the negotiation, maybe because you're not sure what you're doing, maybe because you're not clear which area you're buying in, you don't know what sort of due diligence is needed, and that's where you bring a buyer's agent in. Just what I've done so far is got a little about 8 properties. I've stepped back and I'll explain you why we need multiple properties. Now what we've done is we've ventured into developments with other investors. We're looking at a 4th development, which is in Queensland at the moment. So now that's where a lot of people will tell you they've got $5 million in real estate without telling you how much loan is due on those. This is my way of telling what I've done so far. It's very transparent. Most of my portfolio is also there on the websites. Now, if you see, I've gone crazy in Victoria. So you'll see wick in the 3rd column. But the reason is I saw the boom. I was making money in each purchase on a scale of 25 to 30% each purchase. I couldn't see any better opportunity anywhere, and hence I've gone crazy in Victoria. So crazy that on $1.5 million on the land value alone, I've got a land tax of $7,200. So something you should be considering if you're buying multiple properties in a single state. Now, what I've done is, usually people reach in 12 to 15 years in the stage where you have to scale down. I've done that in about 8 years, and I've sold 2 properties to take a gross profit or realized profit of about approximately $400,000 plus my deposit. And I moved it into investments, which you see the bottom portion, right? Where I'm now doing some warehouses and I'm making returns on a scale of 15 to 20% cash on cash, which means now I'm doubling my money every 3.5 to 4 years. And that's the scale you ask me the address, I'll give you the address on each of the purchases. Even the one that I made $246,000, that was in 2 years' time. A distressed land sale, a build on it. It's a suburb called St. Leonard's in Victoria. And that's why even after scaling back, I've still from a 5.3 million portfolio, I've scaled down to 4.1 because what I want to do now is I'm in the advanced phases of my investment journey. I want to just scale down the debt at this point. That's also what has led me to move from my IT journey to real estate. And I do appreciate all of you taking time today and just listening to someone who you've seen for the first time. But yeah, I do appreciate. Now that's fairly equity-wise, I think now is the time when I can scale down, sell everything, still have about 1.6-ish to 1.9-ish million in real estate. And if I can get a 6% return on it, maybe in a commercial, I think I've done my bit. I've generated the income that I wanted to. Now, that's fairly about the team. Now, another avenue or certain business scale up, you'll see we are a 3 years young business, but because what we've done, I've been able to help more than 100 clients so far. We've just signed 137th client. We won the Outstanding New Business Award. Between the team, we have 22 properties in 3 countries. While I was preparing this, another property acquisition manager of ours has bought another one, and we are sitting at 23 properties within the team. We've served more than 150 clients. I was also working part-time for 3 years before jumping full-time. We are headquartered in New South Wales. We do residential, commercial, investors, and owner-occupiers. That's how the scale of the team is. That's fairly the office that we've got. To begin with, in the 3rd year, actually in the 2nd year, in Sydney, Bella Vista. It's not easy, but we've done it. All right, I'll come back. That's enough about me. Let's do a bit on why we are investing or why even we buy something. Doesn't matter what asset you're buying. You can be into any asset. What's important is your why. Why? Because it has to be in front of you. Why you're doing what you're doing. The better you have your why defined, the better you'd be able to do what you're doing, because it's a journey. You may have to compromise a little bit here and there. You may have to scale up. You may have to go past your notions and comforts. And that's why the why is important. That's my why. Family, kids, financial freedom. I'm very passionate about property. That's how I've been supporting everyone. You'll see 2 little ones just handing over the bottle openers to you guys. So yes, I get a lot of support from them. It's a bit of education that they do as well, how dad has scaled up, what we have to do in future. Lastly, give back, which of course I'd like to be in a position to give back more, and that's what has supported me. I still do a lot of work in India with underprivileged that need help, but I won't give ever cash. I'll see who needs support, I'll check the invoices, and I pay directly to the doctors if I have to, or someone where whoever needs support. But I'm still lucky to be in this position. All right. Now, in your workbooks, you'll see the why just in the first section. If you're looking to scale up, I could see a lot of hands risen for people who want to buy property. What I want is just you write your why, your own why. It could be family, it could be a Lamborghini, Maserati, or whatever. There's nothing wrong about it, right? But you have to have your why, which is always in front of you. That's how I like. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Even if it is your job, that why is important. Otherwise, you land into mid-40s or early 40s, and you land into midlife crisis like me, and think, okay, now I need to change my profession, right? That's why that why is really important. The next part, this is fairly what I go through with my clients. Every single call that I have one-to-one with them. The next step, the vision, right? We've defined our why. What about the vision? What are we trying to do? In the last 130 odd consultations that I've done, these are a few reasons I've seen. I want X number of properties. Look, it's not a race, right? Everyone is in a different stage of their journey. So I want 20 properties, but I'm not going to go there. It's a hassle. Every single property would bring its own set of challenges for you. So it's not easy either, right? I want X in desired income. Perfect example of how the vision should be. I want X amount of cash. I want $1 million after 20 years. That's fine. But if you need 100,000 still a year and money gets devalued with inflation going up, guess what? You've exhausted all the cash in about 6.5 to 7 years, right? So having cash, it doesn't help. What helps is your money protected in assets, right? And those assets return you certain income, and using that income, you can manage your lifestyle. Ideally, that's the vision, right? I want to step down. I want my partner to step down. We are nowhere near it. Because with the growing income, your lifestyle goes up first, your commitments goes up first. So that's another section. Best to write your vision, what you want to do. Stick it in front of your desk and just revisit it off and on. That's what I've done back in 2017, and I've followed it every day since. Okay, I'll walk you through goals. How to set what should be my goals, and how do I even define my goals. And that's the analogy, the thought process behind it. We're going to go through every single aspect that I've seen so far, or I walk my clients through so far. And that's why I said it's educational, it's not selling. That's how your goal setting should be, right? We worked on why, we worked on the vision, and we worked through the income. Now your income could be, as simply said, I want $100,000 back in income. Now property as an investment vehicle gives you approximately around 4% net. There are holding costs. The cheaper the property, the higher the holding cost. On a premium property, about 1%, slightly less. On a cheaper property, up to 2% holding cost. So if you're getting 6% rental yield, effectively you're going to get 4% only return. Now we have what we know the income that we want, 100,000. We know the returns any investment vehicle would give you. Property, for example, 4%. And now let's define what number we need in portfolio on an average, right? We're sitting at $2.5 million fully paid out in assets in order to secure that income. Now, that's why we say it's a long-term asset. Now, another avenue is if I can improvise on that 4% yield. I'm sorry, it's too many numbers, but we can improvise it to 6% return. We can knock off a good chunk from the portfolio value from 2.5 million going down to 1.6 million. Now, you have notes. You can note down anything. Later on, you can approach us. I'm happy to share the presentation with you, or you can take pictures as and when we're going. But that high yielding aspect, I'm going to park it, and I'm going to revisit it in upcoming slides. This is another one. You've got this in your workbooks. What we're looking to do is see where we are in this situation and scenario. Income, low, medium, high. The average Australian single household income is about $65,000. Sorry, I love numbers, so I'm going to bore you with a lot of numbers. Two income household earning is about 80 to 90, depending upon which state you're targeting. Either way, most people who are buying property earn way better than that. But earning is not important. Saving is, right? We can earn ample, but we don't save just because our commitments are high. So I've read a book called The Richest Man of Babylon, which says you pay yourself first, right? If you want to read that book, The Richest Man of Babylon, one of the books that I've read. I won't say I've diligently followed it, but if you can't save anything, just pay yourself 10%. Make sure your money is working for you. And it's a slow progress from there. But look, assess yourself where you are in the income. Could be low, medium, or high, right? Then savings. Could be low, medium, or high. You can have a low income, but a decent saving. A 1,000, 2,000 a month is enough. You don't need too much. So every 3 or 4 years, you can again look at buying something, right? Your position in your journey, where you are you starting out? You don't even have single investment or any asset for that matter. Are you a rent investor? So we've done so much, we're still renting. So I had a very lame goal when I started. What I wanted was every property gives me $100 a week positive in rent, and after 5 properties, I'm virtually rent free, right? But the way we've scaled up, I need 11 properties now, right? So just because the lifestyle has gone up as well. But having said that, I was starting out. Rent investor is when you are simply renting, just because people in Sydney, they have to go 50, 60 kilometers out to buy a 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom on a small land for $1.2 million. It's not everyone's cup of tea. I started with a household income of $75,000. I couldn't even think myself buying something around 700 at that point. So then you could be upgrader. That's absolutely fine. Your needs, your family needs a place to stay or to upgrade. That's absolutely fine. Then there are certain two terms that I've defined, Midwester and Highwester. Midwester is you're in the middle of your journey, you're just scaling off, you bought two, you're seeing what to do next. Highwester is like a high net worth investor. So just understanding, you've reached that peak, you've built your gross, what to do from there, right? Just circle where you feel you are, and then we discuss the type of assets, what we can target and how we can target. All right. This is the type of property we are buying, right? So we've done why, we're doing how, the start, what type of asset, and where's the focus. I was talking to someone and I told them, look, I'm participating in an expo, and the guy said, oh, just be careful, don't end up buying a house and a land package. So I said, okay. Why? Because there are huge commissions involved, right? I think as a consultant who's working for you, there's no reason why someone can't tell you, I'm keeping this much commission in that asset, this is what I get paid. So if that's not coming out, or where they're getting the money from, I don't think they're acting in your best interest. Right? So I've seen, when I was investing in Victoria, packages around 400 to 450, returning 30,000 in commissions. That's a good 7.5%. That's a year's worth of growth in many cases. So that's how I've come into being a buyer's agent. So anyways, coming back, you can still buy cheaper properties, right? I've supported buyers in Queensland, invest in WA. I've supported buyers being recommended by mortgage brokers from Melbourne. They're based in Sydney and they're buying in Queensland. We also need to assess the journey and where the focus should be, right? Now this is where I will revisit the yields aspect. Let's say you need, actually I'll cover in the next slide. But look, the other idea is when you're buying cheap, are you sticking to regionals that are commutable to major employment precincts like CBDs, or activity precincts like beaches, or you're going in the middle of nowhere? Because when you are starting out, the focus should always be on growth. Doesn't matter where your journey is. And why is that? This is another thing that I've built. I'm sorry if it gets confusing, but based on how I've grown, right, you'll see two sections there. So section 1 is acquisition, and the section 2 is growth. I've just kept it very simple, right? Just so I can help someone understand. So what I've done in acquisition is, remember our goal of having 2.5 million in assets. It's not an overnight thing. Even if you buy one now, and you buy your second one in 3 years' time, and your third one in 6 years' time, and your fourth one in 8 years' time, for a reasonably priced property, it's achievable, right? It has taken you 8 years to come or to go where your goal is, 2.5 million in gross. You don't have to worry about paying the debt off initially. Of course, and go by your comfort. I'm not saying you have to scale up overnight. Just go by your comfort. A lot of people will see the property becoming positive before they go on to the next one. I've had clients who bought a property for $800,000 and they did not bought an investment until that entire $800,000 was in the offset account, which is fine, right? Not everyone is going through the same journey. Not everyone has the same income. Coming back, 8 years time, let's say we've acquired 4 properties, $500,000 each. We've scaled up about 90% of LVR. So even if we bought 2.5 million in assets, your loan is $2.25 million. Consider it as the peak, right? And we've taken 8 years time. What happens after 8 years? This is a worst case scenario. Let's say we put a stop there. RBI stated the Australian growth over period of last 35 years is 6.8%. The growth may vary where we are buying, but I'm just taking a below average mark. Let's say our portfolio or property grows at 6% year on year, right? It takes 12 years for your portfolio or property to double in value. So I'll add 12 years on top of the 8 years, and I've scaled up to a portfolio of 5 million in about 20 years' time. I know it's easier said than done, right? The growth is never linear, and that's why we are averaging it out as well. When we started with the 90% loan, because the properties have doubled in value, the loan drops to, anyone? Half, 45%. And why is this a worst case? Because I'm thinking you have not bought anything in those 12 years. I'm thinking you're not paying any principal on your properties. So focus on your lifestyle or family, right? I'm also considering you'll exit at that point, but you don't have to. Now consider 6% on a $5 million portfolio. You're getting $300,000 year on year. But in order to be in that stage, you have to be consistent. You have to make sure you're saving and you're investing wherever you're more comfortable. Doesn't matter if it's property, shares, whatever you're comfortable with. I know property, so I'll not deviate from that, right? All right. Now, what was important in this example, and this is a real life example because I've shown you what I've done in last 8 years. Growth. Without the growth, you cannot exit. Which, if you see the left bottom of the screen, I've written in the red boxes both growth and cash flow. When you start with a low income and a low deposit, you need a balance. So your cash flow helps you sustain. It helps you borrow more, right? And there is still growth in the properties. Without the growth, there is no exit. You've bought debt on board, you'll pass debt on further to kids, right? They won't even take the debt. They say, give me the assets, I'm not taking any liabilities. But the idea is to generate an income. If you've got a, right now, what happens is at the end of 20 years, your equity is 55% because the loan has dropped to half. So your equity has gone beyond the debt. You can sell half and pay out the other half. So ideally, between 2.2 million to 2.5 million fully paid out at 4% conservatively, you've got $80,000 to $85,000 in income. Any questions so far? Am I explaining too well? Oh. All right. I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you. Look, the idea is, again, you don't have to exit at that point. But if you have to, there's your break even, right? For the income that you desire. If you're growing well, that's awesome. You can do that in 8, 12, 14 years. If not so well, 22 to 25 years. But you have to be consistent again. And I'm not a believer of compromising in order to scale up. Compromising with your family, compromising with the kids' education. I'm not a believer of that. I'm just saying you have to be consistent either way what you do. Yes, I have compromised personally a lot. All right. Some example again in terms of properties. So actually in this case I've taken example of 6 properties, not 4. But the break even is 15 years. Now, if you want to take a picture, you're more than welcome to. The idea is I've taken whatever I've talked just now in air. This is actual numbers. 6% growth, 6 properties. At the end of 15 years, I'm going to sell the first 3. I'm going to pay 45% in capital gains tax. If you come to the bottom, total profit versus loan, you see I have more money after selling the assets than what I owed to the bank. Rather, I have a buffer of $118,000 cash at hand. I've also taken a total portfolio value as an example and 4% on it, $114,000 income generated. Now you can scale it down to 4 properties and you will still walk away with the similar numbers in about 20 to 22 years. Right? That's why I said it's a slow process, it's a slow progress. But having one wrong property will take you back by 3 to 5 years also. That's why it's very important what we consider, why we consider, right, and how we go about it. All right. A little bit around where we can buy and why we are buying. What we saw in Sydney was an infrastructure-led boom because there was a Western Sydney airport being planned, a $13 billion project. Sydney was also at the right point in its cycle because between 2006 and 2010-11, it did not grow at all. Brisbane, for example, most investors were expecting the growth in 2011, but Brisbane was hit with floods, right? A negative impact. Brisbane started going up around 2015. I'm just giving you numbers and how I think when I have to buy a property. Between 2015 and 2022, northern parts of Brisbane have doubled in value. But if you could have looked at Gold Coast, for example, the buy price around 2018 and 19, actually 16 and 17, was $420,000 to $440,000. So up till 2021, even 2022, you could have bought something for $620,000 to $650,000. Not 100% growth, but 40 to 50% growth. Now, I felt there was a catch-up that had to be done. You can find Logan, which is cheaper. Let's say $400 today. You can find Gold Coast, which is $600. When Gold Coast goes to $1 million, Logan will also go to $750 or $800. So that differential catch-up is there. Have I bought in Logan? No, I haven't, except one suburb. Why? Which brings me to my second point, demographic. That is very important to me. So, but that's personally my investment strategy, right? If it can be different. That's the thing with every investor has their own philosophy. So you have to understand whoever you're trying to talk to, what is their crux? How do they identify the areas? So for me, I can buy a small land and a small home, but in a good quality area, right? So a lot of people have notions that I want to buy a 500 square meter land, right? If you're buying in inner city areas, you're not buying on a 500 square meter land. You'd be happy with even 250 or 300. And that's, it's never the size of the location of the land or the property, it's always the location. So again, I felt there are certain pockets that are undervalued, but undervalued for the right reasons. So look at Redlands Council, Cleveland, Ormiston, pretty premium, Manly West. But when you look at Kapalaba and Alex Hills, comparatively low priced, but good people living there. An older 3-bed, 1-bath, 1 garage or a carport will actually fetch you a rent of $580 a week. You can still buy something around $650 to $670. Again, a very decent example, right? Employment and activity, a lot of people tell me, oh, there would be Olympics in Queensland or Brisbane, and that's why I'm buying there. But when you talk infrastructure, there are two things. What sort of employment the infrastructure would create while it is being built, and what would happen after it has been built. Ideal example, Olympic Park in Sydney. That would have been multi-million sort of suburbs in the surrounds, which is not. So 9 out of 10 countries would land into a deficit after the Olympics, right? So what's important is to understand the inner city areas where there's some infrastructure being built. I think the ideal thing is tracking how the population's moving within Australia and how international migration is coming into effect. You can look at aviation stats and look at the busiest airports of Australia, which today are Queensland airports followed by Western Australia airports. So you can track where the migration's going. They don't need house now, they just need rentals. But in 3 to 5 years time, they would need a house too, right? If you go in that time, you'll be too late. So also looking at high owner occupier areas. There are a lot of areas, Brisbane for example, there are a lot of renters as compared to any other state. You have to be careful. If you bought in an area where there's any more than 40-45% renters, you are competing with other landlords too. I'm purely talking investment, but I know owner occupiers think the same way. So there is not much deviation even with owner occupier properties, except owner occupiers, as an owner occupier, I don't mind paying an extra 2-2.5% to secure the right asset. How do you find all that information? Look, the council approvals, for example, is public information. Right? All real estate licenses is also public information. So census data, you can find most things there. Percentage of renters. I go to last 18 months to track council approvals. And that's why and then again you have to, so there's a bit, it's not easy, but I'm just saying you can get an idea, right? And then I look at what the sales are. So if there's a lot of approvals, there's a lot of stock on the market, but the sales would not help you sell all of that stock that may hit the market in 3 to 6 months time, that area I would just avoid and move on to some other area. But infrastructure, you have Infrastructure Australia website, you have council websites, most information you can get at no cost, right? I have to improvise, we've got paid resources, that's for us to do most that I'm telling you, it will take only about 30 to 35 minutes. But then you can still do your bits. All right, looking at, we've discussed the location, let's talk about property, the due diligence. What's important? Right, I'll cover our list. Bushfire, flood zone, heritage listed properties, development approvals in the surrounding of your property. Now that is usually paid information, but you can still go to council websites and check the DAs progressed that are in progress in that area, right? You look at, we've got near map images, looking at how the neighboring properties are, going to street view, and then finally sending someone on the ground, looking at the streets. What would you look in the streets? Well-maintained front yards, right? Not older cars, not rubbish dumped onto the streets. What else? Yes, proximity to services, you spot on there. But proximity to services adds a bit of premium to the property, you're right there. But 80% of properties in 80% of suburbs will either be next to a shopping center or a school. Most people look at premium school zones as well. It's a high entry point, it's a high exit point. But if you've not combined it with other economic factors in the surrounds and school loses its reputation, guess who loses value? Ideal example, there's a suburb in Victoria, Point Cook, one of the most premium school catchments, Alamanda. Have I bought there for clients? No. I just went to the next door catchment, saltwater catchment, and we bought there. We've knocked off a good $150,000 on the property, and now the principal of that school moved to this school, right? So that's a better gain sometimes, but that's, again, that wasn't planned. Either way, coming back, a good team, having a good team in place. Your conveyancer, your building and pest inspector, your mortgage broker, one wrong professional will make or break the deal, right? You have your contract on Saturday, and if your conveyancer is not available until Monday, the property is gone, right? What's happening now in Queensland, in many areas, and WA for that matter? If you can't secure the property there and then, you've lost it, right? So we're buying almost 6 to 8 a month. For us to buy, we really have to be on our toes. Everyone who's working with you have to be on their toes, right? Everyone wants to maintain their business. Just have that team prior before even searching the property. Reviewing the report, as the gentleman mentioned, most businesses would protect their own arse than anything else. So the reports are prepared in a way that it'll scare you off. But talk to them, say what's important, what do I have to look at, and what's the cost, and go back with full force with a renegotiation. So we can negotiate sometimes without anything, just $1,500, and if there is something, up to $15,000. Just because I'll stick to my facts and say, that's the cost we are bearing. Who will compensate on that cost? But in WA, there is no cooling off. So there is no negotiation. You can't even back out if there are minor defects. Major defects, the vendor will fix. You can't still back out. So every state has its own laws. You can only back out if there's a structural defect in WA. So you have to be very cautious. Getting the videos done. I've talked to agents, they prepare the videos and given to us, and they've missed the holes at the bottom of the wall. Not a big cost, $2,000 to $2,500, but I would have expected some decency from agents' perspective as well. Everyone has their own working style. Negotiation, biggest aspect. Understand how the agent wants to work. It's a separate topic. I can talk on 30 minutes on that aspect, because I've done that. We've done hundreds of negotiations. I ramp up my team with the process to scale up to that level. Understand how the agent is working. Will they take your offer as a bait and go to other parties? So then I suggest don't give that offer, step back. So I tell the agents, I'm sorry, I'm not giving that offer. I know your working style now, right? And I do ask them, is this your working style? If they say yes, that's fine. You get your offers and then come back to me. If it's still within the permissible limits, we'll give you an offer. Otherwise, we'll step back. Knowing when to step back and when to move on. Always be ready to get up and walk. and then post-purchase, right? What happens if there's a tenant, you bought a property and there is no lease in place? Is anyone aware? No. If they don't pay, you can't even take them to tribunals because you have no documents. You've basically bought squatters on board. Happened to us in one case in WA. We delayed the settlement until there was a lease in place, right? And if it's already tenanted, do you bother to go to the agent or to the agency and ask them for a last 12 months ledger, right? We saw one landlord selling just because the rent was coming as intermittent and he had a fixed lease in place. You delayed by 7 days, pay it within 14 days, you still can't give a notice because notice can be only given after 14 days. Again, different states, different laws. Be careful, right? Know the rules. Minor repairs support. I asked the agents questions like, what do you think we have to spend after buying the property in your opinion? Right? And most agents would say, I don't know, nothing's needed, but they went in the property, they have an eye to judge those negatives. And that's why we get a video inspection done. Settlement cracks is most common. With one paint, it's gone, but that paint would cost you $5,000 to $7,000, right? For an investment which you're buying around 500, 600, that's a good cost, right? Reduction of vacancies. If it's empty, your property manager needs to be on their toes. And then finally a portfolio review. Every single property, revisit what we've discussed, right? See if the situation has changed. If you can build your third and fourth property based on the cash flow, when you are paying it off, you've got that 6% yield that we desire. But again, even they can grow. When you are growing towards that, you can buy a small commercial warehouse too. Again, I'm not saying you have to just, it's a different ballgame, but that's something that you can do. Just be a bit innovative, but still stick to what's tried and tested. I know there are many avenues of investment these days, but I just still stick to basics. I haven't even bought any dual occupancy for me. Just because for the same land, someone has paid $80,000, you're paying $150,000 extra because the price is based on the yields and it's not a commercial. I'd rather buy a commercial. So that's again my perception. So just feel free to disagree wherever you have to. So, all right, that's all about property and everything. I'm just gonna cover market outlook and some examples. But if you feel your time's valued more and you've got some commitments, you're more than welcome to just go. Otherwise, I'll just cover market outlook and explain you a little bit around cash rates. I know we've seen rates going up, right? And that's just one example where I've taken Sydney versus cash rate. Now going back in 2002 to 2009, Sydney went up until 2004 and then was stagnant. Market actually went down, but overall the level is consistent. It hasn't gone down. But if you see the cash rate actually went up. Then came down. Between 2010 to 2012, both cash rate and the markets went up. This is also when Brisbane started to go up. Cash rate went down, every market's going up. Now in the last few years, this is up till March 2021. In last 13, 14 months, we've seen rates going up, but Brisbane market hasn't changed. There were only 2 quarters where there was a drop. Same with Western Australia, it has not gone down at all. Sydney, still consistent, good markets. Keep in mind, the inner city areas, or areas where people would have bought owner-occupiers around 80s or 90s for few $1,000s, they're not bothered. If they have to sell, they won't care about the price. Otherwise, they'll hold if they care about the price. There's no debt on that. But the newer areas are the areas that are impacted the most because most people have taken a bit of a debt on board in order to be in those areas. Young families, those are the areas sometimes which are troubled the most, which is just very common and part of cycle. But that's how the cash rate versus and again, everyone's speculating in about a year's time, the cash rate would start to come down again. Maybe not by that much, but a little bit. So one area is what we have to still sustain. I'm building one and I've just bought an oceanfront lot in Perth, my number 8. So that's a dream come true for me and my partner, which I think I can scale up to that extent now. Again, outlook, this is last 1 year. So how the annual figures changed suddenly, right? The expectation was Brisbane 4.6% quarter, 27% annually, Adelaide 26% annually. Some of my clients are sitting at 45% growth in Adelaide. Bought something for 420, bank valuation 560 to 580. But I think it's just time to step back, because historically Adelaide grows once in every 15 years for 2-3 years for 30-40%, and then stagnates, or it's slow growth of 2 to 3%. It has never gone down in value. But again, an example of how timely we can track the markets, but just if we are active enough. If not, most people would buy the areas that they know of, which is again not wrong. Whatever you can do to make sure your money is working for you. A year later, suddenly everything's gone down. But let me tell you, the stats are 3 to 6 months late. I can tell you, in Gold Coast, for example, the properties we were buying between 620 and 650 have gone up to 670 to 690. That's approximately an 8 to 10% growth, which is going to be reflective in the next quarter's report. But because we are on ground, I can tell you this is what's happening. Lastly, some of the examples that I've done for Kanwar is a friend. This is his multiple properties we've done. This is a pure cash flow oriented property. One example of how I was telling you that when we are building our portfolio, we can focus on cash flow as well, eventually in the later part of the journey, not initially. Another one, this is in Kapalaba, bought a while back. 70 people walking in. This was, I think, midst of 2022. Markets were going crazy, and we were the highest bidder, but I got the property because of the relationship with the agent, nothing else. There were 70 groups visited. He had 20 offers with him. But if we have to secure, we have to secure. This was part owner occupier, part investment. Another example, I don't usually disclose suburbs, but this is one of the Gold Coast suburbs. 3 months back, 600 square meter land. We bought the property for 645. It was actually 660. We negotiated another 15 after building and pest. Exactly number 9 sold after, I think, 15-ish days. This was in February 2023. Sold for 760. Just one example, same property, slightly premium in construction, but there cannot be a difference of more than $100,000. That's the beauty of picking the right properties and negotiating well. If you still need the address, message me separately. I'm happy to share the address. These are not numbers in the air. We've supported a lot of clients, just some reviews, and it's not one-liner reviews. Clients have taken time to write their stories, which I'm really appreciative of. It's a bit of selling at the end, right? Thank you so much. That's all. Didn't want it to take so much of your time, but I hope it added some sort of value to you guys. If there are any questions, I'm here. We are at booth B7. There's a cash flow calculator available, which tells you how much money you need to buy a property and what would it cost to hold a property. There's QR code, I believe, in the brochure that's been given to you as well at the back. So you just have that calculator with you. If it adds value, that's awesome. If you need any other support, any questions answered, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. You can send me an email or just WhatsApp me. My number's there. But thank you so much. I really appreciate all your time.